Hello, everyone, and welcome to another exciting IEN Q&A event. It's scary just how talented the people at IF really are. This is an incredible team, and today I'm really privileged to have three key players who are working on core components of the next iteration of the Tangle that we'll see fully expressed in a post-coordicide world represented by IOTA 2.0, scheduled for the second half of 2021. Now, today I will not be asking the perennial when question, much as I'd like a definitive answer. The truth is that a project of this importance, size, and complexity comes with many unknown unknowns and unanticipated setbacks. I think it's true of all large projects, and to imagine otherwise is simply naive thinking. Certainly, we all know that the IOTA Foundation is committed to getting this work done, and David Sonstebo has made it clear that he's willing to bet his reputation on it happening. Today, I am looking forward to learning more about three cornerstone projects in the IOTA protocol, two second-layer implementations in IOTA Access and IOTA Smart Contracts, and finally, we'll be getting an important update on Coordicide, the transformational update that will make IOTA the world's first truly decentralized, feeless, and production-ready DLT. My name, if you don't know it already, is Terry Shane from the bIOTAsphere, proud member of the IOTA Evangelist Network. And today we'll get along and start by introducing Bernardo Araujo. I hope, Bernardo, that is the correct pronunciation. You'll correct me if I'm wrong. And he's going to talk about IOTA Access, an open source light framework used to build access control and micropayment systems for smart devices. It's designed to work with any IoT resource, whether it's a vehicle, smart lock, or embedded sensor. And welcome, Bernardo.
Hey.
Hey. So for those of you who don't know Bernardo, I didn't until we had this conversation. He was born in Brazil and is a self-described digital nomad. I got a picture of him at his desk at the IOTA Foundation, and I guess this is how they're keeping overhead down these days, Bernardo, at the IOTA Foundation.
Yeah.
Bernardo holds a BSc in electronics engineering and a master's in computer engineering. He works with embedded Linux, specializing in cross-compilation, and has successfully ported IOTA's Go, Python, and C libraries to the open embedded environment, as well as Go Shimmer, Hornet, and the C URI node implementations. He's presented IOTA to the embedded Linux community when he gave a talk about Meta IOTA at Linux Foundation's Yocto project at the 2019 summit in Lyon, in France. And Bernardo also released his first iterations of Honeycomb OS, the IOTA embedded Linux distribution. And in my research for today, I discovered that you wrote a password hash cracker for your master's degree. Any chance that you'll be able to use that to hack into IOTA Access?
Hopefully not.
Hopefully not. So welcome to the IEN Q&A. I know it's late in Berlin right now, and you're probably ready for bed, but perhaps we can start by asking you to provide a brief overview of IOTA Access and its role in the IOTA 2.0 vision. It would really help if you can make this as non-technical as possible for those that want to understand the practical applications of the technology.
Sure.
Over to you. Yeah.
So there's this whole industry area. It's a field of industrial applications called access control systems, and there's many approaches, many angles that you can tackle the problem of. Basically, you have a bunch of devices and resources, and you gotta be able to delegate which entities, like which individuals are gonna be having access, are gonna be able to control, to read, write, execute, both in a digital form as well as in a physical form. And so there's been a lot of academic research, a lot of efforts in the academia to try to find the optimal approach. And there's this professor from Imperial College London. He's our advisor in the foundation. His name is Michael Huth. And he has published quite a few number of papers in IEEE publications and alike, in researching the field of Belknap logic. Belknap was a logician, mathematician from the 20th century, and he laid down four-valued logic. So IOTA has this history of experimenting with different bases of logic representation, and even though ternary is in the past, but there's some interesting applications of four-valued logic or Belknap logic in the field of access control systems. So recently, the IOTA Foundation inherited this project from a partner startup here from Berlin, and we started trying to get this minimum viable product into place. And so we could demonstrate, have this kind of imaginary scenario where there's four different people. One of them owns what was implemented on a Raspberry Pi.
Okay.
So you have basically relays hooked on this Raspberry Pi, and you can make electrical circuits with a lamp or with an electrical door lock. And I actually have some hanging here. I have this stuff lying around in my room, by the way. So you hook them up to the Raspberry Pi, and you have the owner of the device, and he's gonna be saying, okay, so Alice owns the device, and Alice will say, okay, Bob can access it from 8 to 10. Carol will never be able to do anything. Dave will do it later. You can create what's called policies, right?
Sure.
So
Yeah, I mean, Bob, Carol, Ted, and Alice, they get around a lot. They show up in a lot of these sorts of projects. From a production real world perspective, give us an example of how this sort of access control would be used for more than just turning on a light bulb, for example, which, is a great proof of concept. But in the real world, would this be something that I would be able to use if I had my car sitting on the driveway and I was out of town and I needed to be able to generate revenue, which is, a Tesla type model where you'll be able to take your asset and generate revenue from it when you're not using it. Obviously, Tesla's planning on doing that through a centralized system.
Yeah.
But tell us about why this sort of solution in a decentralized network makes more sense.
Sure. So if you look at this board here, it's kind of in the background. It's under NDA, so I can't go into details into like what specific board it is.
Can we get a zoom in on that video?
Yeah, I can show you this.
Okay, all right.
But it's from a partner, and it's an automotive gateway development kit. So it connects to the CAN bus, for example, and a code in a similar approach to how we were controlling the relays.
Yes,
we can get CAN bus libraries and attach them to the framework. And we're also having some internal discussions in regards to decentralized identity, for example. So you can have whatever your ownership certificate being a condition to delegate policies of how that vehicle is going to be leased on a fleet, for example.
Okay.
And we're also working with automotive grade Linux. The IOTA Foundation has become automotive grade Linux partner.
Yep.
And automotive AGL for short is based on IOTA project and Open Embedded. And it's where all these things start to converge. And via IOTA project, Open Embedded, we can deploy all the Rust code, all the C code of the projects from that we've been doing, access, identity, stronghold, streams, and we can start having them running on real world hardware like these.
Cool. So what remains to be done to move this project? Like, you consider this to be alpha right now?
This first release was an alpha.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what remains to be done to move from alpha to beta and ultimately to final production?
For Access, we have a quite good amount of work to be done. We're looking into parser. Right now, remember when I was talking about Belknap logic?
Mm-hmm.
The implementation right now is based on JSON, which is a bit heavy for IoT and non-optimal. We've been having difficulties with Rust, but we're putting a lot of effort into trying to make Rust. We're going to have to start pushing barriers in that direction. But I'm just speaking for myself here.
Okay. I think they call that innovation, right?
Yeah, exactly, and it's what we're here for. So it's a very interesting challenge. But to try to answer your question, it's a matter of really putting focus into getting all these products compatible with each other. Mm-hmm. For example, smart contracts. There's a lot of interesting applications to be done on top of Access 2. So for Access, sorry, I kind of went on a tangent.
That's okay.
We're looking into, together with identity, possibly there could be some interesting angles to explore the Belknap logic implementation that is not based on JSON.
Okay.
So we're looking into some parser generators. For example, there's Bison, that's very classic in the system programming's GNU world. There's yet another compiler, UYACC.
Yuck.
And there's LALRPOP, LARLPOP, which is a Rust, seems to be the bleeding edge in terms of parsers. But it's a very complex thing to put all these pieces together in the places that they need to connect. And Chrysalis, it's a kind of a challenge that at least me, as part of the product teams, sometimes I have a lot of ideas. I want to do a lot of things, but we need to sort out the foundation first.
Absolutely.
And we need to consolidate Chrysalis before we're even able to answer many of the questions that the community has all the right to ask. But it's really coming together. That is for sure.
All right.
I can tell you with confidence.
So, the initial launch partners for the project included Jaguar Land Rover, ST Microelectronics, EDAG, Riddle and Code, lots of others as well. You showed us that board. I know it's under NDA, but do you think it's fair to say that names like this would not be involved? Yeah, would not be involved unless they saw real-world applications and use cases for the solution?
It's ST Microelectronics.
Okay. All right. Cool. All right. So so we're seeing some real world applications. I mean, I can see, even in a warehouse, where before you can use a forklift, who can use the forklift. But it
Yeah.
really ties into identity, because it's
Yeah.
one thing if the forklift's available to somebody with the correct training, with the correct certification, but that only makes sense if you can prove who the person taking the forklift actually is. Is that?
Yeah. Yeah. Or also, maybe if this forklift is being controlled remotely, what machine is sending those commands?
Okay.
That's also because it's people have digital identities, machines have digital
Of
identities,
course.
and but yeah, this scenario that you just painted is very accurate in terms of access applications. Yeah.
So does access without smart contracts, without secure digital identity, actually make sense? Is it a viable product without the smart contracts that will essentially execute the policies and the payment structures? And without digital identity, the whole thing falls apart, doesn't it?
That's a good question, and
That's why I'm here.
the smart contracts, we've asked that question ourselves before, and the way smart contracts come into play is when legal aspects start to play a big influence in your setup. But there's many ways into you might want to use Access that doesn't necessarily involve some sort of legal exchange.
Okay.
Perhaps you can't. There's instances where you might want to do that on a smaller scale. Perhaps if you have it's everything is happening on some industry plant, and the environment is kind of hermetically sealed in terms of
Understood.
legal
Right.
issues. So uh, it kind of starts to play a role there.
Okay. All right. But obviously, there are lots of modular parts. And one of the great
Yeah,
things that I see about the IOTA vision is how modular it is and how all of these
yeah,
components can essentially play together. Um, One of the things that I understand as being fairly unique about IOTA Access compared to other types of access solution which are more centralized and cloud-based and hosted, is that the actual access policies can be or will be, I'm not sure if it's either or both, can be or will be stored on the device itself rather than hosted somewhere else. Is that
yeah.
correct?
Yeah, that's the kind of the future vision. Unfortunately, the MVP that we have right now does not enforce that in the way it should.
Okay.
I mean, the policies are on the device. Sorry, I don't want to confuse you.
All
They
right.
are. However, they depend on what's called a policy store,
Yes.
which is a database. It's centralized.
Right.
So ideally, we want to do the vision that I sort of have for Access 2
Yes.
or Access Beta is to have what I've been calling the Access server. It's running on the target device,
Right.
and it asks the node, hey, we're working on something for the new protocol called indexation payloads. So the indexation payloads can help queries that would be access related in a sense. And
And I,
uh,
I assume this is critical in a mobile application where the
yeah,
device may not necessarily have 100% guaranteed network connectivity, and you need to have the policy locally on the device
yeah,
rather than in some central location. Is that
yeah.
true?
So there's gonna be like the device owner will send a transaction with the new policy. So now the new policy is residing on the ledger, right?
Right.
And if you want to have use that policy, well, the device needs to read that policy in a relatively large window of time.
Yes.
You need a permanode for that
Okay.
will have some sort of non-volatility right, in terms of milestones and message payloads. Uh, so the Access server that's running on the target device keeps looking for querying the node. Hey, this indexation payload access any access policy messages on the ledger.
Right.
Whenever there is, it gets a copy. Obviously, it's been signed by the device owner, so you guarantee the cryptographic authenticity of the policy, and the server it has the public key of it knows the public key beforehand of who owns it, and then finally answering your question, yes, policies reside on the target device.
Okay. So if the policy resides on the device, can access be installed in devices that weren't designed from the ground up to use it? Like how would that work if I have a device that the board wasn't designed from the ground up, with an ST microelectronics system on it? How would that work?
Yeah, in your scenario, it's a Raspberry Pi. So
Okay.
Access, the MVP was implemented on top of a Raspberry Pi, and this MVP you're gonna run it on Linux. It's gonna be on embedded Linux. So anything embedded Linux with Raspberry Pi compatible GPIO. So now this board is ST. It's
Okay.
STM32MP1.
Okay.
It can run an Access server, and the GPIO pins is compatible. I can hook up the relay shield on it, and it works too. But still, that's not ideal. We want to have it running on FreeRTOS, for example, or Zephyr OS, for example, for an ESP32. We're still not there yet. We're looking into how the project will continue next year. There's a possibility that we might switch to Rust. I don't know. I don't want to speak not for myself. And then, especially with Rust, modularity is the name of the game. So you just got to make sure that you can cross-compile to your target architecture. But as soon as you've guaranteed that, it's a library.
Okay.
You just compile. You just hook it up to your source.
So do you see a time when I'm going to be able to sort of just sit at home and go, hey, Alexa, it's going to rain, it's going to snow tomorrow, rent my snowblower?
Yeah. You got to give Alexa your permissions. We would have to look into Alexa APIs. I assume they're going to be something either in Python or JavaScript. We're going to have bindings for that, which are still not they haven't been manifested. So 2021, we definitely have some work ahead of us. Access is just an MVP. It's limited in many ways, but it's also very awesome in very unique ways because it proved the point, and it allows us to move forward. And production ready is definitely the end goal.
Okay. Production ready in 2021?
I don't know, man.
Okay.
Well, Coordicide, you guys saw
Yeah.
a very bold statement. So, yeah.
Yeah, but before or after Coordicide for IOTA Access?
In many ways, Coordicide doesn't. Chrysalis is more of an obstacle.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of times where we start putting a lot of effort into something, but then it's ternary, or it's winter needs one-time signature.
So, if we have Chrysalis part 2, we can look forward to.
That will definitely accelerate a lot of stuff.
Okay, cool. Yeah. All right. If I've rented my snowblower because I'm here in Toronto, get a lot of
Yeah.
snow. Not everybody has the snowblower when they need it, and they break the machine. Um, can this be implemented so that if while somebody's using it, they break it, they pay for it, like a security deposit or something like that? Or would that be a
I
smart contract?
Yeah, smart contract sounds like the way to settle that. But you
Okay,
gotta set it up beforehand. You can't really complain
I
if it
understand.
didn't. Yeah.
Okay, so will multiple people be able to own or control access policies for a device like a multi-signature wallet?
uh, that's a good question. I think in the way they're structuring the wallet libraries, there will be a possibility, but don't quote me on that.
Okay.
Sorry.
I won't quote you, but Chris Muller might. Anyway, thank you, Bernardo.
Thank you.
That was really helpful, and I'm sure I'm not alone in looking forward to seeing and hearing more about this project in the coming months. Awesome, awesome, and good luck with your move. And
Thank you.
look forward to seeing a close up of that board in the not too distant future.
Cool.
All right. Okay. Thank you. All right. So our next guest today is Diego. Diego is joining us from Argentina. Welcome, Diego.
Hey Terry, hey
How are you?
everyone.
Good. So Diego lives in Buenos Aires in Argentina. We've got a really global panel for you today. He's been in the technology sector for over 20 years. He's passionate about two things, programming and teaching. I hope your wife or your girlfriend doesn't feel offended by that. He's worked as a software engineer in many organizations, participating in numerous projects ranging from simulation, video games, databases, and web development. I think you're a professor at the University in Buenos Aires in the engineering faculty, teaching algorithms and data structures. And you were previously the CTO at an online gaming development company in Argentina. Is that right?
That's right.
You see, I've done my research. So,
Yes.
yeah. I also heard you're a professed coffee lover and that you have over 5 different methods for making coffee in your house. Is that true?
That's true. Yeah, I should. I don't know how many exactly. At least five.
At least
Um,
5. So,
so yeah, drip coffee,
yeah.
mocha pot, French press. There are a lot of dogs here, right?
Okay.
Espresso machine.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I have to think about the
All
rest.
right. Well, if I'm ever in Buenos Aires, I'll expect an invite for a good cup of coffee.
You'll get it for sure.
All right. So, you're going to talk to us today about smart contracts, I think.
That's right.
Good. So, tell us about IOTA Smart Contracts. What makes them so smart? And if you could explain this, because it's a complex topic, explain
Tell
it
me
so my
about it.
grandma will understand, which is going to be tough because she's been dead for 20 years, so you might have trouble with that one. But give us the big overview of IOTA Smart Contracts.
Okay, yeah. Tell me about it. It's a really, really, really complex topic. I'm struggling to understand it, even myself, because I've been working in this team for I think 6 months now.
Yep.
So I'm still learning a lot every day. So I'll try to do my best to explain it in simple terms, or at least as simple as I can,
Okay.
or at least the way I understand it.
That's
So,
fine. Grandma's depending on it.
yeah, a smart contract is a program, right?
Yep.
But it's not like any program. It's a program that you run on top of a blockchain, or
A DLT.
in our
Yep.
case,
tangle.
the IOTA, the tangle, right? So we are developing smart contracts on top of the tangle. It's a way to run programs in a distributed way, and also a fault-tolerant way. Also in a way that you can verify the result of the program. You can trust the result of the program and such. And also in a way that the program, that the smart code program takes the input from the tangle, and also it stores the state in the tangle, each, right?
Okay.
So in the way that we are implementing it, it's a level 2 protocol. This means that the tangle does not include the concept of a smart contract. We didn't have to modify anything in the IOTA protocol.
Yeah.
We just implemented a new application on top of the IOTA.
It's like HTTP running on top of TCP/IP.
That is exactly right. Yeah.
Okay.
Something like that. The way it works, so you have, so let's say that you want to run a smart contract, you need to form a committee of WASP nodes. WASP node is what we are developing. It's like the engine that runs the smart contracts. So you form a committee that will run a so-called chain. What is a chain? Yeah, it's let's think of a chain of something like, so by the way, we have an alpha version that we published. I'm talking about what we are developing for the next version. So
okay.
So because I mentioned the idea of a chain, this is the first time that I think that we are mentioning this. Let's think of a chain is like a collection of smart contracts. So we call it a chain because for the smart contract, you need to have a state that changes every time you run the smart contract. And you need to know what is the latest state, right? Each time you run the smart contract, you compute the new state from the last one. That is kind of like a blockchain, right? And that's why we call it a chain. It's not a blockchain, but it's kind of like a blockchain. So I explained the chain. So yeah, if you want to send a request to a smart contract, if you want to, you now have your smart contract running on the committee.
Right.
If you want to send a request, you only have to create a transaction in the tangle. This is an operation that you do directly on the tangle. A transaction that contains in the payload the request that you want to send to that smart contract. The committee listens to all the transactions coming from the tangle, and they say, "Oh, I have a request for my smart contract." Each member of the committee calculates. They run the request. They calculate the next state given the previous one.
Right.
And they all form. They all reach a consensus on the next state to be sure that everyone reaches the same state. Then they sign a new transaction, creating the new state. That transactions go to the tangle, and we have smart contracts.
Okay. So explain to me how these smart contracts are smarter, different, better, more flexible, whatever you want, than, say, a smart contract in Ethereum, or is there no difference?
Well, there is a difference. I can think of a few. So first, in Ethereum, you have only one chain, and all the smart contracts running in Ethereum are running on the same chain.
Okay.
In our implementation, we can have as many chains as you want. Each committee of WASP nodes runs one chain. You can have as many committees as you want, and you can run the chains in parallel.
So does that mean that IOTA smart contracts would be far more scalable than an Ethereum smart contract?
That's the idea.
That's the idea. Okay.
That's the idea.
And
yeah,
obviously you wouldn't have any transaction fees either, right?
And also that. That doesn't mean that you cannot make some smart contracts that require some fee to operate, that will be optional, but the core protocol is completely feeless, right?
Sure, but it's not a fee from the network. It's a fee associated with the execution of the contract.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right. That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. When you deploy a new chain and you deploy new contracts, the owner of the chain says, okay, to run this contract, I require this fee, right?
Okay.
Also, there is another advantage, which is that in Ethereum, every node has to run every smart contract.
Right.
Here, only the WASP nodes and only the WASP nodes in the committee run the smart contract for that chain.
Okay.
And the nodes in the tangle, they don't even know about the smart contracts. So they don't have to spend CPU time to run the smart contracts.
So how do you define the nodes that make the committee that runs the smart contract, and how do you ensure that they don't abuse their power, and what happens if some of those nodes go offline?
Okay, so this is a question that comes frequently. I'm not sure I'm the most qualified to answer this.
Okay.
Because we are developing the core protocol, and we don't define how you select the nodes for the committee, right? That is up to the user. There could be many ways in which you could do that, but the core protocol doesn't define that.
But will there be mechanisms to safeguard the contract that you can define that say, if I drop below a certain number of nodes, auto-select some for me, or, a smart contract is great. It's only as smart as the people who program it. If you have a rogue contract that you can't stop or that does things with unintended consequences, shame on us if we haven't designed it in such a way that we've thought about that before it's too late.
Yeah, right. First of all, there is the concept of a quorum in the committee. You don't need all the nodes in the committee to execute the smart contract. If one of the nodes drops off, you still can execute the smart contract if you have the quorum online, right? Then the whole validity is provided by the tangle. I mean, each transaction is signed by the committee, and you can even verify each state running the smart contract and verifying the signatures and verifying the state. So it's provided by that. About the size of the committee, so maybe you say, okay, so I have a small committee. How can I ensure that the committee doesn't abuse their power? Well, maybe you can choose to have a larger committee. You can have committees as small or as large as you want. So again, that's up to the user, right?
Okay. But if, like in the real world, if I had a physical committee of people, I'd have to know the people that I wanted to sit on the committee. Will it be possible in the future to have like permissionless selection of committees where I simply define the number of nodes that I need and the system will select them for me?
So the concept of permissionless, maybe it's already provided, because to run a committee, to add a new committee and connect it to a tangle, that is a permissionless operation, right? You don't need permission from anyone to add a new committee. Adding a new node to that committee, that is an operation that would require you to move the chain to another address and to form a new committee for that chain, keeping the state. You wouldn't lose the state,
okay.
But that would be an operation that is entirely possible. We haven't made any tests for that yet, but it's possible. You can change the structure of the committee by moving the change to another address, but it will still work, right?
Okay. All right. What's the time frame for smart contracts in terms of beta versus first production version? Do you have any sense of that? I'm not looking to tie you down to like specific dates because I know that's always flexible, but just in general terms.
In general terms, we are aiming for a beta version, including this concept of the chain that I was talking about, and also a specification for how to write the smart contracts for Q1, I think, 2021.
All right.
We also depend on at least on Chrysalis because it will work on top of Chrysalis.
Okay, so all of these things, just like with IOTA Access, we're still predicated on the actual release of Chrysalis before. I know you say Chrysalis, I say Chrysalis, but it's
sorry.
That's okay. No, it's just an accent thing. But I think we're still dependent on that, which is sometime Q1-ish of 2021 at this point. Is that fair to say?
I think I really can't say.
Don't worry. And by the way, for those people who think that I have a really nice house, you're wrong. I have a really nice green screen. I saw that in the comment before. All right. Anything else that you would like to share with us about smart contracts that you think would be interesting or that we should know? For example, what will the interface look like? For WASMs, for defining smart contracts. Will this be something that only somebody with a master's in computer engineering is going to be able to do, or will it be something that anybody can create a contract?
Right. Of course, that we are aiming to make it as easy as possible. But we are not there yet, of course. We are still defining the interface. We are in the early stages of running actual smart contracts in WASM. So the idea is to write the smart contract in Rust. We are running we compile the Rust program into WASM, and we run it. We don't have the interface defined yet. We are working on that. Of course, we are aiming for something as easy as possible, something like Solidity or Polkadot. But yeah,
okay.
I can't tell you much more than that right now.
All right, cool. Somebody in the audience has asked, is there a recommendation for the size of a small WASP committee running on, on an RPI 4?
At this point, I can say, because it's highly theoretical. Maybe we have to make more tests running larger committees to say, well, to reach a number that we say, okay, maybe we recommend this size. But for now, we are only, we only have simple smart contracts implemented.
Yes.
And so we don't know how the system behaves at this point with real-world smart contracts, right?
But theoretically, there isn't a limit just preventing us from running more complex types of scenario, correct?
Theoretically, yes.
All right. And is there a standard that's been produced, such as the Ethereum ERC20 or ERC721? Are there defined standards that have been produced or written right now?
We are not, at this point, we are not defining any standard about that. Of course, that we will be able to do that if needed. Running an ERC20 like smart contract in our system. Maybe it's possible right now. And also, the fact that we will run on IOTA adds another possibility, which is to use color tokens, which adds, more possibilities, but we haven't explored that yet.
So say more about that. You see, you created your own problem, right?
Yeah, that's right. So instead of creating a new coin and saying, okay, I have 1 million of my invented coin, you can take actual IOTA and convert it into a new coin, and this is a transaction in the Tangle. So that coin has actual value, and that creates different possibilities. But again, we haven't explored that yet.
Okay. All right. Cool. All right. Any other questions from the audience before we bring on Darcy? Anything else that you want to share with us, Diego?
I don't think so. No.
How large is the group working with you on smart contracts?
Right this week we are one more. So we are right now like 5 people.
Okay.
Working on smart contracts team. One other Argentinian joined us this week. We are very happy about that.
Okay, that's good. That's good. All right. Excellent. Well, thank you for your time. It's been great having you. I look forward to having one of those coffees when I'm over that way. It's Argentina is certainly a spot that I would love to visit. My daughter spent about 6 months there, and definitely on my bucket list. And Sergey has been posting in the sidelines that I shouldn't be coming for the coffee, but for the wine.
Yes, that's right. I mean, if you want to get good coffee, don't go to a random bar in Buenos Aires.
No.
But if you want to get really, really good wine, go to any market in Buenos Aires and you will.
Okay, fantastic. All right, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Darcy, I think you're up. Do you think that picture does you justice, Darcy? Oh, we can't hear you. You're on mute.
Sorry.
That's
thank
okay.
You. I tried to look like the picture today. Looks like I succeeded.
Yeah, no, it's not bad. It's not bad. So, Darcy, mathematician extraordinaire and self-professed geek. So I understand you nearly failed math in high school, but
do you believe it? If I tell you, no one believes when I tell people about this.
Yeah, but here's what I don't get: how does a guy nearly fail math in high school but receive a perfect score on all your PhD courses?
It's actually quite simple. When you don't try, you don't succeed, right?
Okay.
So you fail this first assumption to actually do something.
Okay.
That's something you will learn with experience.
All right. You don't think it has anything to do with the fact that you had a brilliant and talented tutor teaching you?
Well, maybe. But maybe I got the teacher because of the efforts, right? So we're never going to know.
Okay. So that's how you got introduced to IOTA, I believe, was that...
yeah. So my PhD had nothing to do with IOTA, actually, but I had a really good PhD with Sergey. By the end of the PhD, Sergey came and introduced us to the whole universe of IOTA, the Tango. Right. At the time, we were more, let's say, random walk based. And at the time, my PhD was fully about random walks. So I had a lot of experience to put there.
Okay.
But in the end...
This kind of random walk?
Yeah, a bit less drunk than this, but almost like it. Sometimes the random walk is called the drunkard walk, so it's a good representation.
All right. Have you ever beaten Sergey at chess, though?
No, I don't play chess, to be honest. I'm a huge board game lover, but I don't really play chess. I love Terra Mystica, though. Actually, I don't think anyone in IOTA Foundation can beat Sergey. And actually, I'm scared to the day that Sergey decides to play board games too, because I'm not never going to win one anymore.
Aha.
So,
All right. So,
so I have to be careful.
yeah. So after speaking to you, I think I have to put Terra Mystica on my Christmas list.
It's extremely good. I recommend a lot. It's a really big brain game, let's say, and I think you're going to enjoy it.
All right. So I have a question for you.
Go on.
All right. How can you tell whether a mathematician is introverted or extroverted?
Now I have one question for you. You think I am introverted or extroverted?
I don't know, but how can you tell?
I don't think you can tell, to be honest.
No, that's not true. The introverted mathematician looks at his shoes while talking to you, and the extrovert will look at your shoes.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's a good answer. I didn't think about it. Usually I tell them if they go away from the party before and after 1 hour. But your way is quicker than mine.
All right.
You have a faster approval rate.
All right.
A faster approval.
So seriously, it's great to have you here, and we're going to talk about Coordicide, but I think it's probably fair to say that many people, including my late grandma, don't understand the difference between mana, proof of work, and rate control. So can you give us an easy overview before we go into more detail?
Sure, of course. So let's start about mana, because mana, I think, is the biggest Pandora box for many people.
Yep.
They kind of don't get what's happening, and no one's kind of willing to open the box. But the idea that mana is quite simple, right? We don't have proof of work as a mining object in IOTA. We don't have this lottery. We wanted to emulate what proof of stake coins have, in the idea that if you contribute to the network, then you have more access to the network, then you have more impact to the network.
Mm-hmm.
So, but we don't like the way that proof of stake does it. We're using fees usually, because this makes the coin becomes too centralized economically and brings some other problems. And of course, many people is going to defend it, and they are not wrong about it. But the idea, we want to build something different from it, because we want IOTA to be free and accessible to everyone. Okay. So the idea of using proof of stake is not really a good one for us. Now, what mana is, it tries to emulate this idea. The idea is, the more you participate in the network, the more mana you get. But in IOTA network, participating in the network means issuing messages, making the coins going around, because this helps with confirmation, this helps with adoption, this helps with everything we kind of love, right?
Right.
So what we do is that we reward people by this. And the way we have right now to measure this participation is actually issuing transactions, what we call now messages in Coordicide, but let's say making tokens going around. Mm-hmm. So when your token is there, it generates mana. And when your token goes to other people, you can pledge this mana to a node to kind of say, my tokens are contributing to the network. If I have a lot of tokens, I'm contributing more, so I have more mana. And then the nodes get this mana. And then mana, as we have right now, we have two kinds of mana in Coordicide. One called access mana and one called consensus mana. The difference between them are basically we try to separate the two, because we don't want to have a market built around consensus mana. Okay. Because we don't want people to be selling the power to make decisions. But we think it's okay if you contribute to the network and you want to sell your access to other people to be able to do this. So that's why we separated them. So we have those two kind of things. Maybe later we kind of make mana represent more stuff than just tokens moving around. But that's the let's say the base way we make to make sure that people get rewarded and access get distributed according to your contribution to the network without making fees happening. Mm-hmm. And that's something important. Now, when we talk about rate control, so we first need to differentiate between rate control and congestion control, because they are similar modules, but they are completely different. Okay. Rate control is trying to not allow a node to do harm to the network by spamming messages. So rate control try to make people not be able to send a lot of messages in a short period of time. While congestion control try to take a situation where the network is being used a lot, and try to allocate resources based on your contribution. So this is big. This has a big difference in the sense that rate control does not consider mana. You just consider your behavior. You are not allowed to spam. You can send a lot of messages, but you should not spam them. Should not, let's say, fill your neighbor inbox with more than what he can handle.
I thought that spam was actually good for the overall health of the network, though.
Depends what you call spam, right?
Okay.
Let's say constantly sending messages is good for the network.
Yes.
Try to send 1 million messages in 1 minute is not good to the network.
Understood.
So the idea is that you can send a lot of messages. You're going to have your own, let's say, rate of messages. But if you try to send it all in 1 single second, what is going to happen is that you're trying to mess with the bandwidth of our neighbors. And this is something we don't want to happen.
Okay.
So everyone needs to be a bit reasonable about who is around you. And congestion control, differently from rate control, considers mana. Because during a situation where you cannot really issue all our messages, our let's say resources or bandwidth is allocated according to what you have of mana. And what is proof of work? Well, proof of work, everyone knows what it is, but the point is that proof of work is just a puzzle you solve to show that you, let's say, in some sense, you are doing something. That's why it's a proof of work. Mm-hmm. And then you issue your message. Proof of work is our main way right now of dealing with rate control, of keeping people from spamming. But what we are doing is something a bit more elaborate than pure proof of work. We are doing adaptive proof of work, which means that as closer you send your messages, as higher the proof of work you need to do. So as more difficult is the puzzle you need to solve, and more time you take for it. So this means that you cannot really abuse a very, very powerful computer to send much more stuff and try to mess with your neighbors anyway. In the future, probably for IOTA 3.0, we have ideas of replacing adaptive proof of work with something we call VDFs that have the same property, but they are less, let's say, less abusable by FPGAs and other, let's say, ASICs and things like this.
Okay. Well, I love to hear. That's the first time I've heard of IOTA 3.0. When we haven't got IOTA 2.0 yet, but that's really good. So when we talk about rate control, a question just came in from the floor. We hear a lot of stuff about dust attacks, and for those people who aren't familiar with a dust attack, essentially, because a single iota, not a mega iota, but a single iota is such a small value that you could send individual financial transactions for a single iota, and essentially they're all value transactions rather than straight data transactions, but of such an imperceptible value that you could essentially flood the network with tiny value transactions. So how will that work?
I'm going to be honest. We are still researching a way to deal with dust attacks that will make everyone satisfied. Right now, we have two approaches that we kind of developed in the last research summit. We are still seeing, let's say, we're going to probably use both of them. But let's say, I don't think the research is developed enough on this, so I can really talk with confidence about this. Mm-hmm. We're going to have a way to do with this. We have great minds, and our ideas already work in some sense, but we want to make them better. We want to make them just like the other components of Coordicide, that we are confident that things are great. So I don't think we are yet on this state. One of them, of course, involves burning small quantities of tokens. They are left unchecked in outputs. But of course, before we talk to the owners and they know that they need to move tokens from really small outputs to, let's say, to not create dust. The other one uses delegated keys that make it not only you be able to do this, but also allow third-party individuals to do this for you. I mean, I'm not really going to enter the details. Even myself, I don't know all the details right now because the discussion is going on many parallel conversations and things like this. Okay. So I don't want to really take, let's say, yearly conclusions on this, and then later we have a blog post that says something completely different.
Right.
But what I can assure you guys, it's dust attack is one of the main points being studied right now by IOTA Foundation, and we're going to have a really good solution when things go out.
Okay. So you mentioned IOTA 3.0. Obviously, 2.0 is Coordicide. Coordicide was delayed. We've got David saying that if it doesn't happen by the end of 2021, he'll resign or shave his beard or swim naked across all the Norwegian fjords. Is it a reason to worry that it was delayed? Some people have said the IOTA Foundation has problems delivering on its promises, and it's been exploited by various trolls in the crypto community. Is it still safe to say we did it? And are we still on track to do all of this?
Okay, so I want to put here two sides of the coin to us to check. The first one, of course, is that is not only research but engineering. I think that the thing that got delayed is not really courtside, because to be honest with you, if you didn't ask me about courtside delay, I would say, what? Courtside was delayed? Really? I didn't know about it. But I think Chrysalis got delayed. I think some things are kind of expected to go after Chrysalis because we need to code Chrysalis to after code courtside, especially since one is going to use things from the other. And Chrysalis has a more immediate action that we kind of want to have there. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the things. The research in courtside, really, it got a bit, let's say, it got affected by some stuff. Of course it got, right? We got a global pandemic, and this affected us. Many key people got vacations going on. Not going on, but went through vacations, and I mean, we went so workaholic in some time that we saw and say, hey, we have 2 months of vacation,
right?
And we kind of had to take them because of the legal status that Berlin imposed upon IOTA Foundation. So many of those things happen, and of course those small delays pile up. I think if I look at the research department only, I don't know about the engineering department, but if I look at the research department only and try to say, well, how late are we compared to what we expected to be? I would say 1 month or maybe 1.5 months at most. But this is a pile up of many small things happening, and also this is a result of our, let's say, standards maybe being too high. Because we really not only are caring about, I have a good solution, but sometimes look at courtside and say, maybe this is too complicated. Let's try to simplify it. And that's, for example, why for our first idea, we had a value tangle and a main tangle on different layers. And basically this would create situations that would be too problematic for solidification, for FPC, on where we wanted to vote. And then we found a really good solution, especially by Hans and Billy. They are, I'd say, awesome researchers for having great ideas that fused both tangles together. And now we have only one layer where we can do both things. We can run both things there. So this kind of thing, this also, of course, do a small delay. But are we really late to say, oh, we are jumping from February to December? Not really. I mean, we're gonna the progress on the Nectar, on the Go Shimmer is going so steadily, so well. I think every week everyone is happy about it. I think it's gonna go out. The components you are trying, the problems we find are small when you solve it. So something I can say is that I believe that 2021 is actually quite okay for us. Except, of course, if you have trouble coding it. And I think that no one in research department really feel this huge delay that maybe is why the community fears.
Okay, so I mean, obviously, this is a complex project. This is not some small little undertaking. This is, I mean, we're looking to change the way the world computes at some level. So this is a mega project, but you're still pretty confident we're going to see a mainnet without a coordinator in 2021.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna write that down and take that to the bank. So
I take my bird out too if you don't do it.
Okay, you will?
I will.
All right. Okay.
It's not as impressive as David, but I will.
Okay. All right. That's good enough for me. So, so how is the Mana implementation coming along, and what are the next steps with Mana?
Okay, mana theory is, I believe, completely spec'd out. We don't really have anything to add on mana theory. What we're doing now are two big studies. One smaller one that is the mana behavior. So how would the mana be distributed in the IOTA network, and how can this impact really the user cases? How the the nodes really are affected by the mana distribution. That's one of the things we are saying. The second one is a huge distribution, a huge discussion. We started some weeks ago about mana market. So this started as a research discussion, and we grow up, and now we have even the board of directors, let's say, taking part on it. So we want really to see how the community, how this is going to affect the community, and how really the possibility of being able to sell and buy access mana. Remember that consensus mana is not transferable,
Right.
but how access mana really going to work? How this change our coin, right? And really, let's say, all the impacts you can have, and even on a PR. Maybe I'm actually not allowed to talk about it, but don't tell them. Maybe
It's okay. It's just you and me. Nobody else is listening. It's
Oh,
okay.
thank you.
You
Thank
can
you.
share with
You
me.
can
It's
you cut
okay.
this out when you go to the YouTube?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. So, all right. What's the biggest trade-off that Coordicide will have to deal with, do you think? Or do you think that it's already an ultimate solution that doesn't have to deal with trade-offs if we get rid of the coordinator completely?
Yeah, for me, believing in ultimate solutions is like believing I can beat Sergey on chess. Doesn't really exist, I need to be
Okay.
realistic here. We have great solutions, but courtside it's not really a final object, but it's a first step. Courtside is the first thing we're gonna do in a sequence of ever going upgrades about IOTA, and it's even would be more precise to call courtside IOTA 1.0 instead of IOTA 2.0. Because courtside is really where we envisioned it on the white paper, and really is the first step we take about centralization. So from there on, we're going to evolve and evolve and evolve. So courtside is not really ultimate at all. We have many plans, we have many objectives for 3.0. And maybe we're going to be in 2 years talking about IOTA 4.0 here. We never know, right? So while IOTA 1.0 is all about decentralization, IOTA 2.0 is all about decentralization. IOTA 3.0 is all about scalability and sharding. So that's things that kind of always go up. That's what we have on our minds right now. And also about IoT. But when you talk about the biggest trade-off, which is the real question here, right? So when you talk, we are losing the coordinator. And although we don't like the coordinator because of the centralization, the coordinator has a really good feature that inside a small window of minutes, we have non-reversibility.
Right.
And when you talk about courtside, now we have finality, not really something that takes 3 minutes and it's done, but a different grade that evolve over time. So non-reversibility now, it's more probabilistic security than it was with the coordinator, of course. So it's more of what you can expect, right? For example, I cannot really say, well, my transaction is done 3 minutes afterwards, if maybe it took 3 minutes to reach the whole network with this information. So the idea is that now we have different grades of reversibility depending on how much time you wait for your transaction. So although microtransactions are going to take seconds to be confirmed, they are more reversible than more value transactions that maybe take minutes to be confirmed and things like this.
Okay.
Depends on really how secure you want to be with your transaction. So when you talk about security on this level right now, it's not really about I can, but I cannot do. But if it's more expensive to do or less expensive to do. And what we work with, it's with probabilistic security, right? So what we want is that our attacker to be able to try to reverse a state of a transaction needs to spend so much money for that really it has no really reason to do it. So
Yes.
why would I want to make someone lose a $1 transaction and spending $30,000, right? So probabilistic security is all about this. It's all about not really trying to make things impossible, because let's say, as Sergey usually says, the enemy of the great is the perfect. So if you try to make something perfect, it's probably they're going to fail and not get the great solution you can have. But so it's not really about making things impossible, but makes them so expensive that really is not you won't want to do it at all. And that's something you can't have with the coordinator. 5 minutes, it's done. Your transaction is never going to be reversed. So
Right.
that's a trade-off I think we have. I don't think it's bad or anything. It's like it's part of life, right? Bitcoin suffers from the same stuff. It has probabilistic security. But Bitcoin waits 1 hour for things to be done, and we want things that are done in seconds.
Got
So
it.
we need to be clear about what we mean about security here and reversibility here.
So how screwed are we if there's a bug in Coordicide after deployment?
Not really. I mean, the only way we did stuff is such that we can make payloads that can build solutions for everything. So for example, I could run the coordinator inside Coordicide, making a special payload type, and everyone recognizing IOTA Foundation nodes that are going to issue these payloads. And then we have the current IOTA network running inside the Coordicide. So we can make so many different solutions for every kind of situation I face there. That I mean, unless things are screwed up on a really huge way that we won't not really let go like this, we are just fine. But of course, I want to assure everyone that big part of the time we take on Coordicide, especially after the coding is done, is testing, retesting, checking for a lot of situations. They can happen, but they are very unlikely to happen, especially with the amount of security measures you take outside them.
Okay. That's very reassuring.
Rest really well because it's really simple for the IOTA Foundation to take, let's say, some hours and solve any kind of bug and that the network may find.
Okay. Do you think that Coordicide is going to be introduced with the flip of a switch, or will it be a gradual process where more and more nodes leave the coordinator behind? It's just going to be a sort of flip?
I think both solutions are possible. That's one thing we have on the agenda to say, let's check this after we are more advanced on everything, on coding especially. But we never really decided on this. We just kind of know that something that's going to decide on this. So guys, both things may happen. Let's say it's on our agenda to really decide on how we're going to do this. But both are viable and both won't face any problem. We're gonna decide on what's the best solution for the nodes, and then everyone's gonna do it.
Okay. A question that's come up a lot that I think a lot of people are concerned about is this move away from the Winternit's one-time signatures. After Coordicide, with the new wallet, we'll no longer have one-time signatures, correct?
Much before this, actually. I believe this is now a Chrysalis topic, right?
Okay.
We decided on it, and our engineers are working full-time on this kind of things. So, of course, what I can say, our testnet won't have it, Nectar already.
Right.
But Chrysalis is going to get rid of the one-time signatures, if not mistaken.
Okay. So if I have money in an IOTA seed, will I have to change the seed in order, like after this changeover? Will all the seeds have to change, or will the seeds remain the same and just the signature scheme for moving the tokens change?
I think this is too technical for me to answer. I mean, I don't have the expertise on how really gonna get rid of it because I'm not part of this group, you see, that decides this.
Okay.
This part is more engineering focused than research focused. So, I mean, I believe that Wolfgang would be an amazing person to answer this.
Okay.
But I myself cannot answer, so I apologize.
So we might have to move seeds after the change.
I don't want to say something that may be interpreted wrong. I really don't know.
Okay. Maybe if there's somebody in the audience, I think we had Sergey out there. Maybe you could pop something into the chat that might answer that question. So where do you think we are in terms of things? You talked about IOTA 3.0 for sharding. Will that be another hard fork? Or will that be something that's introduced slowly and in parallel?
I think this is something that's going to be, let's say, slowly in the parallel, because the way we see sharding right now is kind of changing the way the nodes operate more really than changing anything in the coin.
Okay.
We don't want really to change the structure of the token after 2.0 unless it's really, really needed. So we are incorporating already, let's say, data fields They're going to be used in sharding. Our idea right now, or called fluid sharding, that is out already in some blog posts. It kind of changes how the node operates, and let's say how decisions are taken, how money is calculated, and things like this. But I'm going to be honest also with you to say that our work in sharding has just begun. We had 2 big, let's say, research summits that we discussed sharding. We have already a sharding group. That's something that we didn't have up to some months ago. We studied many approaches, take from many different coins to take all what we could say it's good ideas that we can incorporate. We are discussing how to apply sharding already in data transactions before going to value transactions, because this has an easiness. Enough also. We are developing many good ideas that are right now becoming documents, and you guys probably going to be seeing many blog posts in the near future about it. We're going to, as the research for Coordicide now needs to deal with mainly small things, or at least a small amount of things that may be big, but a small amount of things. I think that sharding becomes more and more of a big topic for us. And I think we're going to expect to have many news soon. So what I say is that we're not really working for sharding to 2.0, but right now we're starting our research on sharding, and expecting many blog posts and news and research things going on about sharding in the next weeks to months.
That's really cool. So presumably that's really important before we get industrial adoption, because we're going to need that if we start to get some serious adoption of the Tangle.
At the same point, I see adoption as also an ever-growing organism. I think when IOTA 2.0 goes out, it's going to be strong enough to handle many applications. And then we're going to have more people going in, and then we're going to need sharding. So all this is kind of part of a big thing, but it's not really like it's separate, right? It's part of the process.
Okay, all right. There's a question here from Basha. Is a node going to be able to process transactions without having the token? We heard different things. Hans said yes, but we also heard a no.
I mean, of course, there are discussions on this, but one of the big things we discussed in the last research summit is actually how we allow people that have low to no amount of tokens to be able to do this. So what I can say is the following. There is a no in case of congestion. If the network is completely congested, we need to give prioritization to people to contribute to the network. And maybe to issue transaction, maybe we ask people to buy once tokens just to have the minimal amount of tokens done. But I mean, maybe we have an application and then we want to run IOTA, and then I say, well, you need to buy $2 of IOTA. That's nothing really, just participate in this. We still are seeing how to deal with this. We have a really nice approach we call mana faucet. That is a way you can get mana, because remember, everything is based on mana, not really on the tokens. Where you can maybe solve a small puzzle, and then IOTA Foundation, we're going to lend you some mana so you can participate in the network. There are many solutions going around, but one thing that is on our agenda is really how to make sure that low tokens to no tokens, they run in the network. So if you want, of course, on a congestion period to run your application, maybe you need to put some tokens there. But the amounts we are dealing with are really in the, let's say, $2 a house or something like this. And depends on if you're going to be congested at all. So I think it's a trade-off, right?
Okay.
If everyone wants to run without any token in the network, it's impossible to run on a congestion. Sorry, Terry, interrupted you.
No, that's okay. So one other question. I mean, today, development, although it's all open source, it's directed by the IOTA Foundation. The IOTA Foundation decides on the priorities, on the direction, and so the development of IOTA tends to operate much more like a corporation in terms of the foundation drives the forward route for the technology, as opposed to something like a Bitcoin, where it's much more of a distributed committee process. Perhaps you disagree with that. But do you see after Coordicide things changing in terms of the way the protocol will continue to be developed?
I think the way we are building 2.0 is such that if whenever we want to do with the network, we're going to be able to do with 2.0, developing our own way of doing things because of the payload mechanism. So you don't really need to develop the let's say, the coin another way. You can develop a big, let's say, application by yourself, making your own payload, and everyone that knows this payload is going to be able to do this. So what I think is that we are ready. To be honest, I think we already are one of the communities that have more participation, one of the tokens that have more participation from the community. So saying that only the IOTA Foundation develops things, I don't know if I agree 100% of this. And I think that in the way we are doing IOTA 2.0 is such that we're going to have more and more participation from the community. And I think that let's say the way we are doing it is such that the community is going to have much more power on 3.0. So maybe actually the community decides to do something that we are not doing, but it's so good that everyone adopts it. It's done. Maybe develop a new payload, a new way of doing consensus, and it becomes something that becomes more adopted than our way. And like, this is possible. I'm not going to say likely, but possible.
Okay, so I mean, one of the great beauties of IOTA and the elegance of the solution is that the underlying protocol itself will be very simple, and you'll be able to build those second layer and third layer applications on top of that underlying communications protocol to achieve anything. So it provides the building blocks on which everything can be built.
Yes.
So
I agree completely. That's basically what we're doing.
Okay.
We are Lego. The community is the builders.
Well, let's go. So and the sooner the better. I think there'll be no argument or disagreement with anybody watching here. Darcy, this has been fantastic. It's been a lot of fun. It's been, hopefully informative for people in the audience. If there are any last questions, happy to ask them. Otherwise, I think it's probably time to let the people in Europe go to bed, and for us to go have some dinner. So
yeah.
But you're just coming into summer now, right? As we're going into into winter.
Yeah, that's true. There's no summertime anymore in Brazil, though. It's just after 7 p.m.
Okay.
So it's time I start making dinner. So.
Sounds good. All right. What are you making?
Oh, that's a good idea. I had an Argentinian chorizo in my fridge. Maybe I'll try to make it tonight. And
Okay.
Celebrate
All right. Well,
bring all those.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic.
I love chorizo.
Me too. Thank you so much. Thank you also to the community for attending and for your questions. And tune in. There'll be more IEN network events coming your way in the near future, and we look forward to all the exciting things that lie ahead. Hopefully, we'll get some more news before the year ends, and certainly some really, really exciting and encouraging things for the new year. So, thank you for your time. Thank you for your enthusiasm and your continued perseverance with this amazing project. It's been fantastic having you. Thank you. All right.
Thanks a lot, Derek.
Awesome.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Okay. IOTA strong, everybody. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.